We might be wildly unpopular talking about this.
Maybe, but it's
We're
important that people
realists,
know.
100%. We are going to break down how to navigate the World Marathon Majors.
All right, what are the World Marathon Majors?
That's a good place to start. The World Marathon Major 6 Stars are the original 6 premier world-class marathons of Tokyo, Boston, London, Berlin, Chicago, and New York City. The runner that completes all of them gets this big 6-star finisher medal.
What about Sydney?
This is where it gets confusing. So they are adding more, but right now they do consider the 6, as in doing the whole circuit, as the original 6. So those are the ones we're covering today.
We're going to talk about how to navigate the system. You know, these marathon majors are more popular than ever. There's more interest, there's more entries, there's more sponsors, there's more pros doing them.
Yeah.
So they are very popular.
We've never seen the pandemonium surrounding the World Marathon Majors like it is now, right? Part of it is the running boom, which we're pumped about, of course, as coaches, as humans. We're glad that more people now more than ever are moving their bodies and getting into this awesome sport. Part of it is the hype of the World Marathon Major circuit, which we'll get into how that kind of plays out and impacts runners. So all that means that the stuff that used to be simpler now isn't. And if you don't know any different, then this is your reality. For people that have seen different iterations of this, it is exceptional. So it's pretty cool to be at this stage. But I do think it's important that we break down how the heck to navigate. Like you said, the system, that's a perfect word. It is. How to navigate the system. First up, how the heck to get in. This has changed tremendously. So this is the most important thing. Every major has several ways to get in. The first one is time qualifier. This one's most realistic getting in for Boston and Chicago. Of course, for Boston, we know that you have to go about 5 minutes faster than the qualifying time to have a chance. Otherwise, you got to try to requalify. Berlin also has qualifying standards, although I don't usually hear about people using those to get in. New York also has time qualifiers, but it fills very, very fast, and it doesn't guarantee you necessarily an entry, I think, unless you live there or have other ways to qualify in. It just, again, kind of amplifies your application.
Yeah, Tokyo and London also are much tougher via time for non-elites. So those ones are that's not really a pathway for those two.
But time qualifier, that is one way in.
Yeah. So if you're performance driven, building your strategy around time qualifying for Boston and Chicago is a great first step. All right, the second way in is through a lottery system. So London and Berlin are very competitive lotteries to get into.
London, I don't know anyone. Do you? I don't know anyone that's ever gotten in on London lottery.
I think I only know charity runners that have done London.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which tells you something. We'll get into that.
Yep. Tokyo, you have decent odds compared to London, at least. And then New York City, sort of mid-range odds. What about Chicago?
Chicago, it kind of depends. I think I always get the feeling, no one has ever told me this, I always get the feeling that if you go in through lottery and you're a first-time marathoner and you live here, it's considered largely a first-time friendly course because it's relatively flat. If you live here, you can train for it. I have a lot more of those people getting in on lottery. I have my people that live here trying to get in their second, third, fourth time that don't get in via the lottery. Yeah, not as successful. And I think that's true for a lot of majors. I mean, they want you to come in through a different route every time you come in. So a lot of times, like first timers have a little bit more luck with that lottery.
Yeah, so the pro tip here is to enter multiple lotteries each year to try to increase your chances. You know, the downside of this is that if you are lucky, you might be landing 3 in a row, and that is, you know, a different marathon strategy to be so close because in the fall, our marathon majors are really clustered up. Yeah.
The third way is charity bib. I think this one is, the most interesting because it guarantees you a space, right? And it is the easiest way, I think, for guaranteed entry. The downside is that a lot of these fundraising minimums are, I know Chicago, a lot of them are closer to 15, 16, 1700, all the way up to 3,500, 5,000 plus. It can get kind of crazy. And yeah, you have to fundraise, right? That's part of it. That being said, if it's something that's near and dear to your heart, it might give you some really great momentum. London charity spots are especially common. Like we said, this is going to be kind of your one way in. That's a little bit more likely than the others. I think London is the #1 race in the world in terms of how much money they raise per the race as well. So their minimums are higher and the more people do it. I do think that plays off on the course too. I think there's a lot of feel good, wear your charity. New York and Chicago absolutely have really great charity ecosystems too. The thing that we know, we have a lot of athletes that do those two races. A lot of the charities will also, if you hit your fundraising milestones, they will also give you training, whether that's virtual or in person, or maybe even with Edge if you're with some of our charity sponsors, which is really, really huge because it will be a much more comprehensive, positive process that's going to support you all the way to race day.
Yeah, the charity bibs are great for the folks who are seeking that like final star, right? So like this is a lot of people who are like just so eager and have entered the lottery multiple times. This is a great way in because it's guaranteed.
The last way in, which I'm always surprised when, I guess I don't think of this one when we have athletes, especially looking for that last star, are tours. So these are usually done for international entries, which is why we start with New York and Chicago, or even Chicago and Boston as your first ones if you're stateside, and then work your way more international. These are especially useful, of course, Tokyo, London, and Berlin. You're absolutely going to pay a premium, but you're going to gain guaranteed entry. So you got that. They'll also usually do some type of hotel package, which you're of course going to pay for, but like it's going to be part of that package. And it's going to logistically give you a little bit more support. So if you're a nervous Nelly when you travel, this might be a really great plan for you.
Between the tours and our charity bibs, there's often perks that come along with like the starting village or the finishing village, right? To have a special tent with maybe food and coffee before the race, or special bathrooms even, which I think is like a premium perk at these races.
All right, second big thing. First one is know how to get in. Second is know the personalities of each race. Berlin first is more likely to PR. This, I will say though, it has been humid and hot the last few years, but it's extremely flat. It's historically the fastest course in the world. We have a lot of world records that fall in Berlin. And it really is ideal if you're trying to chase a time goal and you feel like you have good placement in your corral. This is probably going to be one that you want to put on your radar. That is the thing you're focusing on.
All right, our second course is Chicago. And you said, speaking of fast courses, like world records fall here in Chicago too. This is a fast and beginner-friendly course. It is organized. It is electric crowds the whole way through. And this has been a big change over the history of at least my running Chicago.
100%.
There were pockets on the second half of the race that were just ghost towns.
Yep.
And now you cannot find a spot that's not occupied by crowds, run clubs, neighborhood folks out there to support runners. There's great logistics for Chicago as well in terms of spectating. So that's like one of the best things.
And great logistics for runners because you begin and you end basically in the same spot. So it's not this point-to-point shit show of trying to get, everyone from one place to another. You don't have to bank quite as much time on the front end because again, everything begins and ends downtown right by Grant Park, which is huge. Also why it's great for your first World Marathon major.
Yeah. But speaking of shit shows and not starting at the same place, we love this race, but New York City is not the most logistically friendly for first-time runners because it is a point-to-point race. And because getting to the starting line requires runners to wake up at an ungodly hour to either take a bus to Staten Island or a bus or a train and a ferry to Staten Island and then another bus to get there and then, wait for it, sit in the starting village for upwards of 2 to 3 hours before you even start the late race.
Yeah, for a late start. I mean, you better bring a second breakfast.
Absolutely.
You better bring a second breakfast. Yeah, it's epic, not fast, right? Those are the big things. Epic, not fast. We're not going anywhere super quickly. There are going to be bottlenecks, which I think this year I heard about more than ever.
Yep.
The bridges themselves, people are like, oh, bridges. No, the bridges, you're talking a 3 to 5% grade up and down that last miles.
Yep.
That wears and tears on you, so you better train for it. But that also means I do have athletes that have PRs on New York. I will say that. They're usually more front of pack. And they have been not in the last 3 to 4 years when it's become a lot more crowded. I think that this race overall should be, if you have it on your list, it should be more about experience than time. And if time happens as a byproduct, great, but don't put all your eggs in this basket for a super fast race.
One thing about New York, and I could probably get goosebumps now just thinking about it, the energy of that course, and not just of the course on race day, but of the city for the week and a half before is just electric. It is just one of it is truly my favorite weekend of racing in the world.
And I think a lot of people say that. And a lot of people go into New York ready to absorb that.
And that's the best way to approach New York City, in our opinion.
Oh, Boston. Boston's lovely. We think about this one like a legacy race. Like it is very, very meaningful. People will almost always say it's the one that tended to have the most feeling, like a lot of strong community historical ties, and it's hilly AF. You just need to know that. The first 60 miles of the course are net downhill, so you are going to be crushing your quads. I mean, that's just, you need to practice overloading your quads. And then the last 10 miles have all of the climbing with all of the hills. So it's setting you up for quite the hard time climbing, but it is very, very, very prestigious. This is another one that's point to point, not quite the logistical cluster F of New York, because this guy can only ever get so big. They have, I think it's like 20,000 less than New York that race it. So less buses. It's a smaller production. It's not small by any means, but it's not quite as many hours that you're going to be up. I still say pack that second brekkie, but you're going to get going and be done before dark. It also requires qualification. There's that. You can get in as well through charity, 100%. That is a valid way to get in. But for most entries, it's going to require you to qualify with a significant buffer.
Next up is London, and this is the one with the largest group of charity athletes that are racing, and as you said, is also the one that makes the most money from charities. So clearly there is like this community vibe there. The history of London, you have these epic landmarks, and I think for a lot of folks from the United States, this is a race that is just like running through a picture book, really. It's very tough general entry odds. So
again, neither of us know one person that's ever got in. So do not think you could. If you get in through the lottery, let us know.
You
You can be the first.
You're right. Supposedly they have a lottery.
I think it's just always no.
But it might be something similar to Chicago, where more local runners are getting that first access to those spots. But as a result, there is such a strong charity culture at London, which makes it a very different vibe of a race. Last
but not least, Tokyo. The thing that we hear about this all the time is it is impeccably organized. Like, you will not find a better organized world marathon major. It's very much set up and executed flawlessly. It's very much considered a cultural experience. People will go there. We were just talking about athletes that are going there for this year, and they will then stay and travel, similar actually to how Berlin rolls, do things after in that area. So it's not usually just a runcation. You're doing that and then, tacking on another 1 to 2 weeks. Travel planning for this one is key, especially when you're dealing with the time differences.
There's an app called Time Shifter that I've used with great success that actually sets you up a couple of days before to get you more acclimated to the time of your trip and the time zone that you're going to. And when you're traveling this far for a race, one, it makes sense to do some sort of vacation either before or after, preferably after. Maybe not preferable on your body, but in terms of having a good race, you want the touring time to come later in that trip. Make the most of it. It's a long flight for folks here. But also we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to be able to actually enjoy the time there. So using something like Time Shifter would be helpful. And I'll put a link in the description.
And one more thing for Tokyo too, in the last couple of years, we have heard less and less people getting in through lottery. So almost turning in more to like a London situation.
So you know how to get into these races now and the personalities of each race. Let's talk about the caveats of each of these majors.
We might be wildly unpopular talking about this.
Maybe, but it's important that people know.
100%. Because again, stuff has really, really changed. And I think it's good to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, so starting off with entry, right? Low acceptance rates for these races, and they're getting harder and harder to get into. And I think, there's going to come a time where there no more entries will be allowed. I feel like Chicago and New York have expanded probably as close to as far as they will be able to go in terms of swelling numbers. We've seen record numbers at these races, upwards of over 50,000 runners on these courses, which then impacts the race day experience of our runners, like say in New York, where if you are in the final wave, you're just there for vibes because it is really difficult to set a personal record.
On that, crowding and course congestion. I will say as a coach, this is one that we have seen, especially in Chicago and New York, very clearly. It also is very dramatic because when we came back post-COVID, I remember that first year back, 2022 probably, was 25,000. And last year we were at 55,000, which is like, I think it was somewhere in the 40s pre-COVID, right?
Right.
But seeing it stack and stack, we are at mile 18, and this year, staring up Halstead, trying to find our runners was nearly impossible. I have never been more exhausted after a race just by trying to look and look and look. It was so dense. It looked like mile 2, and we are mile 17.7. That is how many people are running this race. Maybe they add a wave eventually to like address that, but wow, was it packed up. And runners the last 2 years have commented on that too. You know, record capacities, you have a ton of athletes on the course. The upside is you won't ever run alone. The downside is you're going to be like boxed in and be rubbing elbows with people. And I personally think it's harder to race that way and find your flow. Yeah. I think you can have a lot of hype, but I think it is less and less likely that you're going to have like that perfect PR day because of how congested these things have become.
Yeah, and another reason you might not have a perfect PR day is conditions. You know, more and more of these races are skewing hot. More and more September and October are tending to be really super warm for our races compared to what they previously had been maybe a couple decades ago or, you know, even 10 years ago. There's not really a change for this in the future. The massive fluctuations, even within a week, means that it is really unpredictable conditions for all of our marathon majors.
I don't think that we should expect the World Marathon Majors to change their weekends. They are locked in for a very long time on their prospective dates. So you either need to get really, really good in the heat or change your training or change your expectations heading into them.
Yeah, and if I was to guess, I would say maybe one shift we might see with our marathon majors in the future would be an earlier start time if possible, because some of the later waves, you know, the feedback that we get is just runners are suffering in these races, which are supposed to be an epic celebratory day because of the conditions.
Breaking down these larger field sizes, because this is a phenomenon that is very new. And I don't think it's going away. I don't think they're going to reduce the field size going forward.
No.
What this can mean, really crowded aid stations. We've heard not so much that we're running out of things, but I couldn't get to things or I had to like really weave and bob. I slipped on a cup, all of that. I think it's really difficult to have good early pacing. You're either swept up in a wave that's too fast or you're crowded and boxed in. Narrow sections. I heard this last year more than anything. I could not believe how many people said in New York, like they literally had to walk through, you know, it's impossible for them to police the course all 26.2 miles, especially with such a large point to point through all of the boroughs. So just knowing that that is a reality is huge. And you have a lot of lost time and extra distance weaving through traffic.
All right, so talking about logistics, right? So we have early wave starts. We have long transportation to the start in certain races like New York City. I don't really know about our international ones.
I don't know as much either.
Yeah.
I know people usually take Ubers.
Yeah. So these are all things, but you need to be looking at your transportation options to your start because that will really factor in what your sleep will be like that night before. Some of them are point to point, like our New York City, and they have different, you know, with the different start and end locations can be complicated logistics, particularly if you're traveling, you know, and it's not your local race.
Yeah.
It is added stress, you know, to figure out, okay, do I have a hotel at the start or do I have a hotel at the finish?
Yeah.
How do I get to the other location or how do I get back to my hotel after?
How does my family find me?
Right. Yeah. All of that. We've also seen bag drop delays. So, you know, you have 50,000 runners. It's going to take a while to get your stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
Some of the races, like New York City, have a no bag option, which is really great. If you don't need to leave a bag of stuff over, they give you a special poncho cape situation and you are on your way. So there is a little bit of a perk there for a faster exit.
Generally speaking, and I've hinted at this, I personally don't think that the marathon majors are very PR friendly these days. I just, unless you're somehow at the front of the pack and you're going to be done early and not affected as much by crowds and not affected as much by weather, you know, you might want to plan accordingly. Course personalities, of course, they also really play into this, right? New York having hilly bridges, Boston being that crazy heavy, quad heavy net downhill followed by the hills in the last 10 miles. And then Tokyo having really variable spring weather. Things like this just add up and don't always set you up for success. So maybe with these, you know, going into them, if this is your thing that you want to chase these, think about how they can be more experiential and less of a perfect execution, I think your joy is going to be a lot higher. That being said, if you want a PR, and this is coming from us, as coaches who write programming year round for athletes, if you want a PR and that is your priority, and you really want to race a race, doing something smaller, doing something flatter at a better time of year might yield, if all the stars align, is more likely to yield a better time with less chaos. Are you going to have the hype leading up to and on race day? No. You are going to have to kind of weigh that trade-off, but it helps. As you're planning out your year, my pro tip is this thing I call a net race, right? So if you, let's say, have your lottery in for Chicago or New York, I would say register and find a net race, a smaller, like easier, simpler, logistically, all of the above race that you could do if you don't get into the other ones. And the beauty of it is you could actually race it, right? So good examples in the fall for us are like Indy or Grand Rapids, Detroit even to some degree, because they don't tend to overfill it, although it's already sold out. So, but in future years. And then what happens if you don't get into the lottery? You're not as bummed. Right. And they're similarly timed races, so you can still train with your training partners if that's what you're doing. Or a lot of those races, the smaller ones, they have really great deferral policies, or some of them even have crazy bib transfers where I can transfer my bib to you. Let's say I get into Chicago, I don't need my bib for XYZ. I can then transfer it to someone else. So planning on that net race for me is huge as I'm teeing up my athletes to be able to, truly, if they want to race, give them that opportunity.
Yeah, it's like the shop local version of a marathon, right? Because
it is.
Our marathon majors really are the big corporate, they have huge corporate sponsors. They are the ones that people know. Like if you tell somebody that you raced New York City, they're going to know. You tell somebody that you raced Indy, they're
right. Okay.
Yeah. It's still a marathon. It's still a big deal.
So now you know all of the details. You know how to navigate it. You know how to get in, entry, right? That's number one. Second, what the personalities of these individual races are, and then also the caveats of marathon majors generally. You can decide if this marathon route is the one for you, given the conditions of the system right now. We also want to know what other tips you might have. What did we miss? Pop that in the comments, and we will continue to go from here.
And if you already got your 6 stars, put that in the comments too so we can celebrate you.